Hello, I'm Ramachandran. I'm here to talk to you about what Scotland should do. A week from now, Scotland will be confronted with the yes-no vote, which takes place on the 18th of September 2014. Yes means Scotland will become independent, and no means Scotland will remain part of the United Kingdom. I have to begin by congratulating Mr. Alex Salmond, the First Minister of Scotland, for having got the debate on Scotland this far. Only 7 days from now, or merely 7 days from now, Scotland would be talking about its future either as a standalone nation, independent country, or as a part of Great Britain. No means it will be part of Britain. Yes means Scotland would be on its own. Let me show you something. This is what I have. Scotland, my country, my flag, but not my money. Let me say this. Scotland, my country, my flag, but not my money. And I have Scotland upside down, which shows in red N and O, meaning no. You know where I stand? I think Scotland should not be voting yes for several reasons. But the most important is Scotland wishes to keep the pound as its currency. That's the biggest mistake Scotland has made. That's the biggest mistake that Mr. Alex Salmond has made. In their white paper on Scottish independence, they have emphatically stated that Scotland would retain the British pound, the GBP, as its currency. Scotland's pet peeve has been that the Westminster model has not done it great favours. Scotland's concern is that its economy has been undermined or shortchanged by the Westminster model. Scotland thinks that its enormous oil reserves or oil wealth has not translated into greater well-being for the Scots. The Scots think that the welfare state has been undermined or ripped by Westminster's eagerness to privatise many services. Scots also think that because they have a very small population, their representation in the House of Commons is so small that their voice has not been heard. It's for this reason that Scotland thinks that it should be an independent country. A country that retains a currency of another nation is buying trouble. A currency's value is guided by major economic factors such as interest rates, inflation, productivity, economic growth, and political stability. When Scotland keeps the British pound as its currency, it's buying into the policies of the Bank of England. Currency prices, currency values are a function of interest rates and inflation and growth rates. And these three themselves are functions of fiscal deficits within a country. And the fourth factor is productivity, and the fifth factor is political stability. So when Scotland keeps the pound as its currency, it's actually buying into the fiscal policies of the remainder of Britain, the monetary policies of Britain, and would be responding to the growth rates of the economy in Britain, and of course the political stability of Britain. Which means that Scotland would actually be ceding economic sovereignty to the Bank of England. So Scotland very keenly wants economic independence, and the big blunder that the Scots will be making or have already made, and the big blunder that the Scots have already made in writing that white paper is that they want the British pound, the GBP, as their currency. That's the biggest mistake that Mr. Alex Salmond has made. Had he wanted Scottish independence with his own currency, I think the whole world would have endorsed it. Scotland's yes vote would have made greater sense had Scotland got a different currency for itself. Scotland has enormous oil wealth, nobody doubts it. This should serve Scotland and the Scots. But would oil find jobs? Oil is all wealth, but it can't produce jobs as such. It can produce money, no doubt, but jobs, incomes and purchasing power aren't necessarily going to be the result of a largish control over the oil economy or oil reserves that Mr. Alex Salmond so passionately talks about. There are many countries in the world that have enormous resources, but these resources have not translated into jobs and incomes. So ownership of oil is not the only thing that would really determine a country's prosperity, jobs and incomes for the people inside that country. We'll grant Mr. Salmond a great amount of lenience. We'll grant Mr. Salmond his due by thinking that oil would somehow make Scots very happy, give them jobs and incomes. But the most important point that I have in mind is that the non-tradables of Scotland are far more important to Scotland's future economic revenues and welfare and wealth. Remember, Scotland is all golf, it's all food and drink, it's tourism and the universities. Scotland has 3 universities in the top 200. It's a place of learning. People come to Scotland for golf, people come to Scotland to look at the beautiful country there, people come to Scotland for food and beverages, and value added is within Scotland. When we talk about value addition, we need a currency, we need to talk about the economic motive of earning incomes. And who would be guiding the value of the pound? The Bank of England. If the pound were to become a tad stiff, a tad expensive, a tad stronger, then the competitiveness of Scotland's non-tradables would be reduced in a hurry. Right valuation of the pound would be a major determinant of Scotland's competitiveness in non-tradables. Scotland would be constantly negotiating with the Bank of England to value the pound right. And what's the quid pro quo? The Bank of England doesn't get anything. It's somebody else's motive, economic objective, but the actions are all to be taken by the Bank of England. But the majority of the impact, the influence of the valuation of the pound would be felt by economic actors in England, in Wales and Northern Ireland, the voters who send the most number of parliamentarians to the House of Commons. Scotland would send no parliamentarian to the House of Commons, but Scotland would be expecting the Bank of England to manage the pound in a right manner. How absurd would this be? A pound as a currency of Scotland would keep Scotland a slave of the policies of the Bank of England. Let's remember this. When Norman Lamont was the Chancellor of the Exchequer in Britain, Britain was a part of the European Exchange Rate Mechanism, or ERM. Because of the German reunification, Europe had to pursue a set of monetary policies in order to integrate East Germany, and Britain at that time felt those policies dictated by the ERM were not a source of comfort, so Norman Lamont chose to take the pound out of the ERM. Working with somebody else's monetary policy is not going to be easy for Scotland at all. It's going to be extremely difficult. It would be easier for Scotland to get its own currency. That's the best choice, Scotland. The Scots should vote for no on the 18th of September 2014, very clearly. The no vote would mean that Scotland would remain part of a political federation of nations governed from Westminster. But of course, Mr. Salmond can ask for greater and greater powers for Scotland.